Welcome to Chris and Jen in the Morning.
Where it's always morning somewhere.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Jen. And we are super excited to have you here today. What's on deck today, Chris?
Oh my gosh, we have so much to catch up on. We have our gratitude moments. We need to talk about our Strides for Pride initiative. And then, of course, we have our big topic for the day, which is
Yes.
bravery.
Bravery, which I'm super excited about. Also, huge shout out to everyone who helped us with Strides for Pride. I cannot wait to unveil what we were able to accomplish together. Super excited. But why don't we start with gratitude? And I will kick us off. My gratitude moment this week comes from a place of great appreciation. Obviously, it's a gratitude moment.
I was about to say, it's so usually you don't come from that space.
I think what I'm trying to say is, sometimes gratitude can be a really helpful tool when you are feeling really low. And so this week I have been really allowing myself to sit in gratitude to help me kind of come out of this low place. So if you don't know, we have two dogs. We have two dogs currently. We've had many dogs before. We go rescue dogs, and usually, we look for the dog that looks like they need us the most. And I wouldn't change that. Wouldn't have it any other way. But our two dogs, Chloe and Lola. Chloe is a husky. We've had her for almost 2 years now, end of this month. And Lola is the most adorable mix of I don't know what. She's just the cutest little thing. And we actually usually adopt older dogs, but we got her as a puppy. She was about 3 or 4 months when we got her. We've had her for not quite a year. So she just turned a year old. And Lola was really sick when we got her. We nursed her back to health. She was super underweight, put on weight, but she also has this really skinny body type, just kind of like a greyhound or an Abyssinian hound or a Pharaoh hound. And she's just a year old. And so she's going through that. She'll put on a little bit of weight and then she'll grow. You could kind of see all of her ribs and we can't get her to eat more. We went to her just wellness check and we were telling the vet, I don't should we be feeding her differently? Am I just worried about nothing? Because, as a true mom, I just am always worried all the time. And what he found when he was listening to her was a heart murmur, which then led to more tests. We found that little Lola just has a really big heart, which when it comes to the Grinch is a good thing. And when it comes to little Lola is not a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a congenital condition and it's terminal. She just had become a little less herself. Lola is the sweetest puppy you could ever ask for. She's so well behaved. She's curious and, sometimes a little mischievous as any curious puppy can be, but she's super obedient and she's super sweet and super loving. You could tell she just wasn't feeling herself. What I'm really grateful for is that there are people like our vet who care deeply and care enough to care about how our dog feels and the well-being of our dog, because in the moments of feeling completely overwhelmed about what do we do, what's the best thing for Lola and how do we help her feel better and live as much of her life as we can, um, having somebody there that will take the time to sit with her, listen to all of my overworried questions, help figure out the right mix of medication so that she can spend however much time she has left feeling as happy as she can be. I'm just incredibly grateful for that. We've kind of got her balance and her medication back. Yesterday, she's jumping around and playing and looking like her normal self again. I just am feeling really grateful that we are able to help her live out as much of a life as she's going to get to have.
Yeah. And she's so freaking adorable. And it is heartbreaking news, but it is also, I think, the fact that you have a care team that is caring for her, obviously, and making sure all the necessary things. I think also making themselves available for you and answering the questions and figuring out the best treatment plans and all of that stuff is
Yeah.
so important.
Sitting down on the floor eye to eye with her and, really taking the time to assess how is she feeling and, especially because Lola's not a complainer, you kind of have to pay attention. I just am super grateful that there are people who care enough to
Yeah.
help them get to have the fullest life possible, because I don't have the expertise to figure out all the right answers, and
Right.
I'm just feeling really grateful about the compassion that they have to choose to spend their life doing that. This last week in her vet visit, I just saw real compassion and care and concern and thoughtfulness, and I just really appreciate that.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm glad you have them. I'm glad
Yeah.
that she's still kicking. She's still licking.
She's still kicking and licking.
She's doing all the things.
Yes.
My gratitude moment is about a group text chain that I have going on. I don't have many. I would say probably like three. And this is by far the largest one that I'm part of. And it's a group of friends that I had when I lived in Texas. Originally, it was four of us, and like when we first met. So it's me and a high school friend that reconnected after we graduated, and then one of his friends that he used to work with. So the three of us identify as gay. And then we had this other guy who kind of came into the mix through like us going to parties and knowing people. And so we always called him like our token straight friend, and he has always been very accepting. He jumps in on the jokes. Like he is just as like catty as we can be. And then one of the guys and is dating someone, has been in a long-term relationship with someone, so he's part of the group as well. He kind of came into the fold right as I was like leaving Texas, and so we have this text chain, and it's not like always active, and it's not always something that we're constantly on, but anytime like we send a message to that group or we put a call out, like we're there, like we're supportive, we, how can we show up, how can we celebrate, all of those things. And it's just when we were doing Strides for Pride, like I sent a note out to them and just like, hey, want to share this with y'all, if you're able to contribute, totally, that'd be great, but totally understand if not. And like they rose to the occasion. We bantered a little bit in the conversation, and it just kind of like I really have this group that I can like send a call out to, and they're there for me and supportive. And I feel like all of my friends are that way, but I just feel like it's different with this group, just because of the way like we talk to one another, and like we hold each other accountable, but like in a fun banter type of way. So it's always like one of them was like, "Oh my gosh, I took the dog outside, walked around the block, and I came back, and I have 50 text messages from all of you." And it's like, "Oh yeah, you missed a lot in that few minutes."
I love that. I love that. That's
It's always
amazing. And
fun.
friendship is, a gift, and particularly when there are those people that you could just pick right back up with, who, that, no matter who or what or where, you can always lean on them,
Yep, agreed.
and you'll always be there for them too. So I
That's
love that.
right.
I love that.
Well, so we my gratitude moment, I talked about Strides for Pride, but let's talk about like kind of where we netted out. So it was a 7-day fundraising campaign where
Yes,
they were
for
asked
Covenant House.
for Covenant House, and they were asking that people who were participating move 40 minutes a day, and
Yes.
then there was a fundraising component to it as well. And we did pretty good.
We did. We did. And I mean, you all did fantastic. I am just so incredibly like grateful and thankful that you all listened to the call that we made, and that you supported and you showed up. I think while Strides for Pride is over, the fundraising is still open, so we will drop a link in case you missed it. The reason that Chris and I decided to take up this cause in particular is because Covenant House supports unhoused youth or homeless youth. And I think homeless youth is a really unsavory topic that we don't want to think about. Most of us have this privilege of not having to think about that. It's a really big problem here in the United States. It's a really big problem. I don't think that any youth deserves to be homeless. The reason that Covenant House supports all homeless youth of any gender, denomination, sexual preference, was background, whatever. If you are a youth in need, you're homeless, they are there to support you. The reason that they have a Strides for Pride campaign is that those who identify with the LGBTQIA plus community are 120% more likely to be homeless than their peers. That is not just double, it's more than double. 120% more likely to be homeless than their peers. That is like a disparate proportion of the population. Imagine being not having a home in society, being shunned for being kind of not following the cultural norm, and then also not having a home in general. You just feel even more lost.
Yeah.
And there's also not just for the LGBTQIA plus community, but for all homeless youth. I think it was 1 in 5. We'll have to fact check me there, but I think it was 1 in 5 of the youth that they help are escaping human trafficking.
Yeah.
And I think when we come from a place where we can't relate or we don't understand, you may think about, well, this is just people that have chosen to run away. But in many cases, this is not people who've just chosen to run away.
Right.
Maybe they've run away because they were in danger. Maybe they've been kicked out because they were unwelcome. This isn't people who had other choices to make. You don't just choose to be homeless because you could choose other things. Well, I think homelessness in general is just a really tough problem that we should all be working on solving, because every human has dignity and deserves a safe place to lay their head.
Yeah.
Certainly, kids do, youth do. So, Strides for Pride and Covenant House is about helping to provide care, a home, a safe place to sleep, health care, all of those things that you don't get when you're homeless,
Right.
to the youth that need somebody to tell them, I love you, and to show them what love means, which, is just so impactful on somebody's future. Really near and dear to our hearts and something that means a lot to us. Thank you for showing up and for helping us to raise money to support these youth who are so deserving. Sorry, I kind of stole the microphone there, Chris, for a minute, but
No,
something that I'm deeply connected to.
I think it's one of those things that when you talk about when we talk about homelessness, I think it's conceptually something that you think more about like the adults potentially that you may see on the street. But when you think about someone of a younger age who is considered youth, like you can't always go to a doctor or seek legal counsel without some type of guardian. And if what you are trying to escape or what you have been put out from are those individuals, it can make access to those things more difficult. I love that you talked about like Covenant House not only provides a place, but it provides so many other resources and tools for these individuals so that they can continue in their lives and in many instances help them build from little to nothing, or in some cases, help them establish something so that they can move forward and have that level of confidence and dependence that they deserve. Everyone deserves that.
Yeah. So y'all showed up for us, and let's just have a drum roll. Our team goal was to raise $500. And Chris, how much did we raise?
We actually ended up raising $1,320.46.
Amazing. More than double our goal, more
Yep.
than 120% more than our goal. So just really, really grateful for all of you who helped us
Yep.
care for these youth, and know that your gift, it goes to a really good cause. So we'll continue to support Covenant House. Excited to see what is next to come, but just a huge thank you to you all. The other thing that we have to share is that we were in fourth place as a team out of 63 teams,
Yeah.
which I'm excited about, but also a little bit sad about. That was, the depth of total raise. So I think there is so much more work to do, but I know that Covenant House takes all of these gifts and uses them in a really efficient, good way to support these kids. There's so much more work for us to do, but
Right.
we are just incredibly grateful. Thank you so much. Every dollar makes a big difference. And for all of you that gave, we appreciate your heart. We appreciate you showing up and helping them be seen. Every little gift is a kindness that helps, somebody else understand that they are not discarded and they are not forgotten. Huge thank you to you for that.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, everybody. So appreciative of everyone who took the time, liked, shared all of our content to help raise the funds. We really appreciate it. You did show up, and like I said, thank you, thank you, thank you.
If you are listening to this feeling really compelled and like you missed out, there is still an opportunity to donate more. So check the link in the description and you'll be able to donate. I think the fundraising goes through the end of this month. It takes a lot of bravery to show up for people in
Yes.
need, and it takes a lot of bravery to keep on putting one foot in front of the other when you find yourself as homeless. And bravery is what we want to talk about today.
Yes, it is. Such a good topic too, because I think how it came into our topics list was because you and I have both used the word brave in talking about each other and kind of like the things we have been through. It's in those instances where both of us were like, I don't know if that's the right word to use. It kind of sparked a moment of intrigue for you to dive a little deeper and really kind of pull that apart. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I'd love to talk first about like what bravery means to us. And I know we have probably a number of stories about what bravery means to us. One of the most memorable that I can think about that made a big impact on me, caused me to kind of pause and really ruminate on this over the years. Way back, what feels like it was yesterday and eons ago, I moved from Kansas City to Columbus, Ohio for work. It was not the first time I had moved for work, it was the second, but that was kind of a big move. We didn't know anybody out in Columbus except for some of the people that I had worked with for a couple of years. We had a kid in elementary school and had never even been to Ohio, like on a vacation or anything. And so moving to Columbus was really a big move for us. I was working with a woman. I don't want to share her name because I'm not sure if she would appreciate me sharing about her, but you know who you are if you ever listen to this. You made such a big impact on me. Um, she, we were in a training session at work and we were paired up together. And she said to me, Jen, I just think you are so brave for moving from Kansas City here to Columbus. My reaction was just like confused. What do you mean brave? I don't think that was brave. I did what I felt like I had to do. I
Yeah.
didn't feel like there was a choice there for me. Not that work didn't give me a choice, but I had to move to make this move in my career. That was just something that I felt really strongly was the thing that we needed to do. Here I was on this mission to build my career, and there just wasn't time to question that. And so over the years I have thought about that moment many times, because what I used to say in the beginning was, well, that wasn't bravery, that was just ignorance. I didn't know how hard it would be. And there's a little bit, I think, of ignorance that helps sometimes play into bravery, because you just don't have all the knowledge to paralyze you
Yeah.
into, pro con listing out all of the reasons that it could be hard. I do think that she was right. I do think that that was a brave moment for us to pick up our entire family and everything we knew to move all the way across the country and start over. My husband having to find a different job and, all of the things, kid having to start new school. Like, it was just a really big moment. And when I think about bravery, I always think about that moment of that coworker, a very wise woman who I respected then, respect now, saying to me, that's so brave. I so admire that. Just going, what are you talking about? um, that's one of the most impactful stories about bravery that I recall. What about you? Talk to me about your story. What does bravery mean to you?
Yeah. I think the thing that comes to mind for me is whenever we had done like my coming out story, or we talked about like the impact of my coming out, things like that. And then you wrote a very beautiful thing to like post to help like bring attraction to it on our socials and things like that. You had used the word brave. It was either brave or courageous. It was one of
Brave. It
those.
was
Brave.
brave.
Okay. And I just remember writing back and being like, well, this is I remember like acknowledging this is really great. I love this, but I don't think it's like fair to say that I was brave. We had a little bit of back and forth about that. And as we have spent more time talking about this, like I do think coming around kind of like how you did with acknowledging that sometimes it's not about like having the big scary thing right in front of you, or having a big, what I would say, like a noticeable hurdle in front of you, but it's like that consistent to push forward. I didn't think of myself as coming out as brave. I just felt like I was at a time in my life when it was necessary. If I wanted to continue to evolve and be the person that I wanted to be, it was a necessity. It to me didn't seem like something brave. That, maybe that's because what I've been taught that brave is not necessarily the correct way
To
to
think
perceive
about
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it really made me think about what is bravery? How do you define bravery? What does it feel like to be brave? And if we start with how is it defined? I think there are a few people who I will pull some words from to share a definition of bravery because I don't think everyone defines it the same.
I would agree.
And for the record, I think that we're all kind of getting at a similar thing in how we describe what bravery is. I'm not here to say one thing is right or wrong. Cheryl Strayed, who is an author that wrote the book Wild, this like lived adventure after her mother passed. Reese Witherspoon made a movie out of
Yeah.
it that was incredibly popular. She also has this book called Brave Enough. I was listening to her on a podcast session of Oprah's Super Soul, which I love to listen to. She and Oprah were having this discussion about what bravery is. Cheryl's definition was bravery is doing something that was hard to do and doing it anyways. She talks also in her book Brave Enough about being brave enough to break your heart. Those times when you're in one of those moments where you feel like, "Oh my gosh, this could go really wrong and my heart could get totally broken,
Yeah.
but I'm going to be brave enough to do it anyways." I thought that was a really good, interesting definition of what bravery is. It's doing something that's hard and just doing it anyways. And I think, Chris, about you and listen to your story of coming out and staying out. Like to me, that's doing something that's really hard and just doing it anyways. Fast forward a few years in time. Glennon Doyle is, if you don't know who Glennon Doyle is, I would highly recommend you look her up because I just think she is incredibly thought provoking and really authentic in the way that she comes across. She is also an author. She says that when we tell our children that brave means feeling afraid and doing it anyways, is that really the definition that we want them to carry forward as they grow older? Because sometimes fear serves us well. Is that really what we're trying to say? I would interject, like, I don't think that's what Cheryl is saying. I don't think that's what most of us are saying, is that brave is just doing something scared. But Glennon goes on to kind of put more words to the things that we don't often say when we think about bravery. It's, if I paraphrase, listening to your inner self, really getting introspective enough, getting quiet enough to hear what it is that you really feel is the thing that you need to do, and just doing it anyways,
Yeah.
regardless of what anyone else around you is going to say about it, is going to think about it, regardless of the outcome that will come from it. I really think that that is such a like such an eloquent way of articulating what bravery is. Basically, turning inward, listening to yourself, and then being true to yourself and aligning your inner self to your outer self. Reshma Sajani, she's the CEO of Girls Who Code. And if you don't know this, by the way, she never actually coded. She doesn't code. And yet she started Girls Who Code. If you have not introduced yourself to Reshma's story, I would highly recommend that. I think it is also an incredibly inspiring story. She talks about bravery, and what she says is that bravery is about joy. It's about joy to do the things that you want to do. I love that. If I take the thoughts from Cheryl and from Glennon and from Reshma, and I sort of think about those for myself and my own thoughts on what I think bravery is, what I think is that bravery is not letting anything, and oftentimes it's fear, but not letting anything keep you from what you believe you should do.
Yeah. Well, and we've talked about how we have feelings for a reason, can be red flags. Just pushing them aside and ignoring them is not the right move. I do appreciate that idea around whenever we talk about fear, to be brave, you just push that aside and you just go and do it anyways. I don't necessarily subscribe to that idea. Although I do think there is a time and place for that. I do think that you had shared with me a link to Glennon speaking and using an example of her daughters getting their ears pierced. Just like as I was listening to that, I don't know. I think at first I was not really I was open to hearing it, but I guess I
Wasn't
wasn't
resonating.
exactly, until it got to the point where she was talking about how she thinks that her daughter that was exhibiting brave behavior was the one who decided to not get her ears pierced. Highly recommend if you haven't heard Glennon Doyle speak about this, we can share a link, we can reference it. But I just thought it was a very interesting perspective that she brought, which then kind of put me on this journey of what is the difference between being brave and being courageous? Because to me, I think we use them very
Synonymously.
synonymously.
Yeah.
Thank you. Whenever I started looking into it, it's interesting that the action that's associated with bravery is it's more given to us instinctively. It's in the moment. I liked how a lot of these reference, it's going internally, it's looking, it's listening, and then taking action based off of that. I don't think that we necessarily believe that is how bravery shows up.
Yeah. Bravery isn't just doing anything that scares you. Like sometimes
Right.
that's stupidity, right? We've talked about listen to your feelings. Sometimes they're there for a reason. Sometimes they're there for a good reason, and you have to make a decision to just do it anyways. I think those are the times where bravery comes in. I think the key to understanding bravery is you're doing something that you just need to do,
Yeah.
whether it is for yourself or for somebody else. When I think about the fairy tales and you think about the brave knight or the brave in these newer age fairy tales, the brave princess, or they're doing something that they believe must be done. Somebody must stand up and do it, either for themselves or for somebody else. I think for me, that encapsulates what bravery is it's doing something that you feel needs to be done, must be done, that regardless of how hard it is, regardless of how much it might scare you, regardless of how much you feel you may not have all of the skills needed,
Right.
regardless of, how imperfect it might turn out, you just do it anyways. You understand that the cost of not doing it is greater than the cost of or delaying
Yeah.
or not. I think that's something that Reshma actually talks quite a bit about. She talks about understanding that you don't have to be perfect to do something. She talks about how she, having no experience at all, quit her job as a financial trade lawyer because she hated it and decided to run for office. Having no experience, not having all of the right skills to be set up for success, and she lost badly. And but it was something that she felt compelled that she really needed to do.
Yeah.
Not letting the fear of failing or being imperfect stop you from taking the action that you feel so compelled to take.
Hmm.
So we're not talking about being careless, because I do think being brave and being careless are two very different things.
I
I
agree.
think being brave is understanding the gravity of the cost, even if you don't understand the whole thing, and just doing it
Right. I
because you
think
know
it's
it must be done.
Right. I think it's that acknowledgement of like, oh, there is fear, there is apprehension. It's a conscious acknowledgement and also a conscious acknowledgement of, okay, how are we going to either overcome this fear or we're just going to set it aside in totality for now because this action still has to be taken. I mean, I think about individuals who like first responders to me are brave. They, are firefighters, police officers. They are all people who understand the gravity of the job and that you don't always understand the situation you're getting into. I'm still showing up and I'm still going to
Yeah.
be present and I'm going to support. I think to me, that's like the action mechanism of this. It's not carelessness. It's not just throwing caution to the wind and going and doing it. It's an acknowledgement of there is something here, but action still must be taken.
And what I love about Glennon Doyle's perspective on bravery is she talks about how so often bravery is associated with those big, bold moves. So people who absolutely are brave every day in their job, like firefighters and police officers and first responders, but that bravery also shows up in those moments of quiet. It's
Correct.
the courage to do the thing that you think is right, even if everyone else is pressuring you to do something different. Sometimes bravery means action, and sometimes bravery means to not take an action
Yeah.
that everyone else thinks you should take. I do think that it really does come down to listening to what is inside you and really knowing like what is it that you are being compelled to do, and why. Where
Yeah.
is that coming from? Because I think you could easily use it as an excuse to
Yeah.
stay immobilized. But it was an interesting perspective. The next thing I want to talk about is how does it feel to be brave? I want to talk about this because in that conversation that you referenced between you and I, going back and forth, um, where I said you're brave, and I still believe very much that you are a brave human in general. I think that you practice bravery quite often. I acknowledge that you were telling me I didn't feel brave. I just felt like there was no other choice. I can relate to that. But how does it feel to be brave, do you think?
To
How do
me,
you think it's supposed to feel, and how do you think it actually feels?
so I think based on the things that we're like told and taught, like it's these are not going to be the right words, but like
No, yeah.
bravado and machismo and like all of these
Yeah.
things, like it's an acknowledgement of what I'm about to do is going to be hard or scary and I'm going to tackle it and be successful. I think in my mind, like that's what I grew up with identifying as bravery. In the instance of like me coming out, I didn't feel any of those things. I just felt like this need to be myself. I have achieved all of these things in my life, but I have no one to share it with. I don't have anyone to share it with because I'm not being myself. I'm not being my authentic self. How do I do those things? I do think like in those moments, it wasn't a conscious decision to be brave. I wasn't like, okay, I'm gonna go put on my brave suit of armor and I'm gonna go out and be me. It was more of like I just need this weight off of me and I need to be who I am.
Cost outweighs the fear.
Exactly. And so many years I lived in fear, right? Like
Yeah.
for the very reason of I don't want to be kicked out. I don't want to be shunned by my family. I don't want to lose friends and peers that I really value at some point. Well, that's not a reason anymore. I acknowledge all of these things could still happen, but it's not worth it. And at that point in my life, it wasn't worth it. It was more important to me to be who I am. And so in that moment, I don't think it was a conscious decision to I was being brave, even in the reflection of it. Had you and I with that dialogue, like going back and forth, like, yes, now more in this reflective state. I can see that. I can see why it is seen that way. And I can now appreciate it for that.
Why it really is bravery. We're going to get there.
But then I was thinking as you were talking also like my move from Texas to New York. I knew nobody when I moved here, no family, no friends, not within a lot of distance. I remember I was having this conversation with my mom and I was like, oh, is this the right decision? It's really far. It's all of these things. And I just remember her like asking me like what my motives were to move. She's like, Are you running towards an opportunity that is exciting and something you can be proud of? Or are you running away from something? If you're running away from something, like, let's just make sure like those are the right reasons. Like, because you don't want to look back and be like, dang it, I was chased away when you didn't need to be. So I like, as you were talking about that, like that memory just came back to me. I think like, wow, even in those moments, the reflection of the choices you're making and identifying, what are your motivating factors and how you're getting there. I don't know, just it brought back memories.
I mean, I think anytime that you're making a move you feel is necessary, is right, but there's risk. You understand that there's risk. If it feels like a sure thing, like the outcome, then it's probably not bravery. Is it doesn't take a lot of courage to move forward with something that has
Right.
a certain outcome. Although I would argue that most things in life do not involve certainty. If you feel like there is certainty, then not all of the time, but most of the time you might be choosing a path of ignorance in order to convince yourself. It's doing something where you understand there's risk and yet being true, staying true to what you believe.
Yeah.
And so integrity comes into play a lot. I think for me, the most important thing to hit on when I think about what does bravery feel like is what you were saying. I expected for bravery to feel like you just had all of this confidence and this certainty and no fear. I don't think that's what bravery feels like at all. I think bravery feels oftentimes like desperation. You just desperately know that you need to do something regardless of the cost, that it feels like question marks. You don't know what the outcome is going to be. And you know that it could be scary, but you must do it anyways. When I think about bravery, I can't not talk about like this journey that and I are on together. This starting of the podcast that we'd been joking about for years. And then earlier this year, having the friend who I had said something to, and then he turned around and did it and went and took action on his passion and going, okay, well, I can't be all talk and no action
Your
anymore.
turn.
I like, as I've shared kind of in past episodes, like being someone who is absolutely terrified of being on camera, of being seen for who I really am and being judged, and someone who does not want to put my flaws out there for
Yeah.
people to see. So knowing that not only am I not comfortable being recorded or even having my picture taken, holding my anxiety chicken, then to get on camera and talk about life in general and our thoughts, and what a terribly vulnerable thing to do. And yet, what a brave thing for us to embark on together, because we're doing something, even though, like it kind of is terrifying, because we believe that there's some good to come of it. Like how much we've grown and learned along the way. I think for me, being in this place where I worked my whole professional life to hone this craft and the skill that I bring to the table. I pride myself on being an expert at what I do, and putting in the work to deliver flawlessly. I remember the leader we had at one point who said one of our goals was flawless execution. Do you remember that? And priding myself on being able to, you know, deliver on flawless execution in many cases, and then to like put ourselves out there and publish something for other people to take in, going, but I don't know how to do this and I'm not like actually any good yet, and letting you see all of the growth phases from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Terrifying how much you and I have gotten from this journey. I just feel like I look back and I think, how could we not have started this? Like how could we not have? Look at all this that we would have missed out on had
Yeah.
we not. I think that's what bravery is. It's not feeling like you're going to get it all figured out. It's just doing it anyway.
Right. I think it was like that was our commitment, right? Was like,
Just do it.
Right. We acknowledged it. We knew that we had those thoughts, feelings that were, I wouldn't even say like deep within us. They were very much so at the surface level. We still did it. And I think we are proud of what we're putting out. We're not perfect. We don't claim to be perfect. I don't want to be perfect, but us sharing and creating a space and an opportunity for conversation and just for a different perspective is so important. I'm glad we're on this journey. I do think we've grown a lot. And do I think we would have found the things that we've learned in a different way? I think so. But I mean, we get to do it together.
I don't think nearly as fast.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think you and I would have continued like talking and sharing, but I don't think it would have been nearly as exciting as what it's been.
Also, I mean, like that first weekend after we recorded, I was physically ill. Like it made me physically, literally, I'm not exaggerating, physically ill. I no longer get physically ill and have to just go lay down for hours after we record. Like that,
Yeah.
that to me, I would say is a big win. I
Personal
mean,
growth.
look, in Strive for Pride, I put myself out there in all of my sweaty, non-makeup, like, no, it's just me, and I'm out here
Yeah.
walking and telling you about what I believe in and asking for you to believe in it too. You know, I don't think I ever would have been able to do that before. I think in a way, when you do practice bravery, it's really freeing, which I think is a gift all on its own. Bravery is hard. Sometimes it's hard in the when you make the choice, sometimes it's hard after the choice. Why is it important? Like, I think I already was sort of answering some of this question, but like what has it given you and why do you think it's important to be brave?
I think it is important to be brave because things have to progress. That's change. That is evolution. That is like, if we only sit in the spaces where we feel the safest, we're not challenged. Not saying that there are not times and places for that, but I think if you want some of the more exciting things of life and you want to see things from different perspectives, like you have to, be brave and step into it. And sometimes that it is an unknown. Look, as someone who like struggled with coming out for many, 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 many years, like I truly understand that it takes time and that whenever it is time, it's important to be true to yourself. You don't want to look back and be like, dang, I missed an opportunity. I think for me, I think it's important because you should be true to yourself so that you can always, at the end of the day, you look at yourself in the mirror. You want to be able to say, you know what, I did what I could and I allowed my convictions I think it's also like life is so much more fun whenever you're shaking it up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I so there are a few quotes. I know you're always the one with the good quotes, but this time it's me. um, I there are a few quotes that I really love that I think speak to why it's important to be brave. Soren Kierkegaard said, "To dare is to lose one's footing momentarily, but to not dare is to lose oneself." And I think like to me that is just the total sum of why it's important to be brave is if you don't listen to yourself and do what you know must be done,
Yeah.
you're at risk of losing who you are. Like you're at risk of missing out because we only have this one life to live. Even if you believe you're going to come back in this life, you've only got it once and it's finite. If you don't push yourself to go after what it is that you really believe in, that you really want, then like you're going to miss out. You're going to miss out
Yeah.
because somebody else is probably not going to come along and do it for you. The universe is probably not going to just keep dropping it in your lap.
Drop it in your lap. I will
So,
say in that instance though, when you feel that way, like when you feel like you can't, like you're immobilized, if you will. I think something that I value about our friendship is that I can call you and say this is what I'm thinking, feeling, experiencing, whatever. It's moments of validation and understanding, and other times it's moments of challenge and questions, and not in a way that makes me feel uncomfortable, but in a way that is encouragement and
yeah,
allows me to start figuring out how. And I don't want to lose that people can sometimes get into a space where where you are like it's a valid question of contemplation, but don't sit and stay because you don't want to lose yourself.
You might fail. You might. I think so. The next quote that I have to follow up Soren's quote is from Lana Del Rey, actually. It's being brave means knowing that when you fail, you don't fail forever. I will probably put that on shirt. Like, I love that quote because it's a reminder. A lot of times, like, I'm a very literal person. That's a part of my makeup. It's a part of who
This
I
is
am.
news to me.
I know it's only news to me. It's not news to anybody else as I go on my self-exploration journey. But sometimes I get really stuck in the calculation of what's going to happen, and where I stop is like too early in the game. But what if I fail at this? We had a leader once who I just still think is the bee's knees. He's incredible. He taught me how to play this game with myself, which is, but what else could be true? Like, sure, that might happen, but what else could be true? And then what? I remember he and I having this conversation, and I was saying something about what if all of this goes wrong and we all lose our job or something, and he was, yeah, what does happen? Do you think then if you lose your job, you're never going to get another job again? And I think this may have been the moment where he said to me, like, Jen, I'd bet on you any day. I think he's the first person to have ever said that to me. And I hang on to those words, and I let him say those words to me back in my head when I am feeling not brave and
Yeah.
when I am feeling really insecure. Because sometimes you do have to lean on other people's belief in you when they're people that you trust. What he taught me is like, you don't look at the situation and see just that situation through and think that that's where it ends. So what? Then what happens after that? You fall down and then you stand back up, and then where do you go from there? For me, that was just such an eye-opening, enabling perspective that I love Lana Del Rey's quote, being brave means knowing that when you fail, you don't fail forever. I think that's a lot of what Reshma talks about. It's okay to fail. We say this like from a, you and I come from this corporate culture of fail fast. It's okay to make mistakes.
Oh,
While we say these things, it's really rare to find a culture where it really is okay to
yeah.
make mistakes. If you're making a mistake, then you better have plan B and C ready to go, all of those things. But really, failure is inevitable. So if you're just running scared from it, you're going to fail anyway. You might as well start practicing failing forward
Yep.
and knowing that when you fall down, you're just going to stand back up. I think that's why it's so important because of what you have to miss out on when you talk about the cost, what it would cost you had you not finally decided that you were going to live for you and not for the fear of everybody else.
Yeah.
Just think, what would you have missed out on? What would I have missed out on?
Right.
What would this world be missing out on? Is so much.
So true. So true. I think there are like that was an internal conflict, right? I wasn't talking to anyone anyone about that. You and I have talked about this before. Like music to me is a huge
Yeah.
inspiration, and it is something that I seek whenever I am just needing an escape, not in a way of like not wanting to solve the problem, but like get the feelings and be encouraged, empowered, inspired. There are lots of great inspirational songs out there. Specifically when I was moving to New York, and I shared this in a previous episode, Rachel Platten's Fight Song
Yes.
was a huge anthem for me to really like acknowledge that this is likely going to be difficult. This is likely going to be hard. But you know what? You keep fighting. You get up and you keep going.
Yeah.
You recognize it and you move on. I think Sarah Bareilles' song Brave speaks to those like quiet moments, those like say what you want to say, let the words fall out. That's just that's us. That's saying what you want to say, right? And owning it. I just think like if you are someone who is music is important to you, you find inspiration in it, like put together your Brave playlist, and when you need it, you go to it and be inspired.
I mean, this is my next question. What is on your Brave playlist? Because I know you have one. I know you have one.
Yeah, mine is definitely a lot of like the ones I just said: Rachel Platten, Fight Song, Sarah Bareilles, Brave, Kelly Clarkson, Stronger. And there's also stuff in there that maybe isn't as what one would think. To me, Andra Day's Rise Up is a good one.
Yes.
I think as much as I like love inspirational like music like that's upbeat, I also think we've talked about this. I believe that words are powerful. To me, the words of that song are very, very good. Sia's Unstoppable is to me another really good one. Then Try Everything by Shakira, which
I
I've
know
talked
you
about
love that
before.
one.
To me,
Yes.
that is a bop. It does. It talks about failure. It talks
Yeah.
about how, you know, you that's how you learn. You try, you fail, you get up and you try again. So to me, those are just some of the things that I go to and listen to whenever I'm needing those sparks of inspiration to be brave.
I love that. I love that. I feel like a really good incentive or prize for me to get me to do what you want me to do is to offer to make me a playlist.
I will do that.
I'm just saying, like, you are the best DJ, the greatest mix master. I think bravery is not something that you just achieve, check the box, and now you're done.
No.
You've accomplished it, you're brave. And so it's something that we're constantly in motion of learning and evolving. And
Yep.
so, what do you wish for or aspire for when you think about bravery now?
We've talked a lot about this in the past of how people stand on opposite sides of a chasm and just yell at one another. I think a lot of people are afraid. I think fear stops them, and I think there is a cultural movement right now that you are either on my side or you are against me. I don't mean that from just the sense of like political parties, what's going on in the climate of communities. If you and I differ
Culturally.
on little
Yeah.
things, like then I can't be like we can't be friends. And I want people to stop that because I think that when you can truly listen to someone and you can hear what they have to say and understand the place that they come from and the reasoning behind things, there's magic in those moments to
Yeah.
be had. To me, one, it's being brave to engage in those conversations, suspend your own thoughts, feelings, and opinions so that you can be an active participant in them. Then I also think as the person who is speaking or the person who is being sought out, like share, speak. Um, don't hide. It's not about trying to change someone's perspective, but share your story. Share your why. I think in those instances, things can happen. And I want people to be brave in sharing their true selves and who they are and the reasons they think certain ways. We align on more things than we don't. This world needs change right now. It needs some positivity, my opinion.
I agree with that. One of the things that we have been talking about the last several months is just understanding when, like, what is the point of speaking up? When do you speak up? This is something that I have been really working through myself because, while it may actually literally surprise people that have interacted with me, I don't want to rock the boat. I want to bring people together. I don't want to ruffle anybody's feathers. What did you call me? What did you say when we were together? Something about me being, I
Oh,
think
your
I used the
dichotomies.
yeah, I used the term oxymoron, and you were quick to say, no, I wouldn't use that one. But like, I'm a dichotomy because just by walking in the room and being myself, I think I can ruffle feathers, but my intention is not to ruffle feathers. So, like, such a dichotomy that I can rile people up, but my intention is to smooth things out. And so I think oftentimes have found myself not speaking up on something that I think people disagree on, not because I don't have an opinion, but because my intent is not to argue and my intent is not to cause dissension. And so I'd much rather talk about something that isn't so high stakes so that we can come together and relate and see each other. I do think there's a place for that, but what I have been realizing over the past few months in particular is I probably am not being true to myself by not speaking up, and that it's time to start using my voice in a kind and caring way. I'm not going to go out and bash other people. That's not my intent. More to pick up the microphone instead of continuing to listen to all of this screaming across the chasm. And I've started to do that in smaller ways that I would not have participated in before, to help reassure people that they're seen and that we are like together. Last night, there was somebody from my whiskey community who posted something that I could tell was out of frustration. And it was kind of one of those kind of all or nothing sort of statements. I typed up a response to it, then I deleted the response. And I was like at this war with myself of going, why I don't want to leave this unanswered because this person is clearly like making a statement out of a place of frustration and pain. I want them to feel like they're not alone. I want them to know that I stand with them, but also I'm not trying to like ruffle feathers and start an argument and all these things. And so I typed and deleted and typed and deleted, and finally where I landed was to leave a comment and not to refute the things that they were saying, but just to let them know that I see them and that I stand with them. I was surprised that like other people saw that response and started responding in a really positive way to that. I thought that's what I aspire for, is more bravery and courage and the words, even when I don't feel like I have the words yet, to just keep trying to fall forward in that. And I'm not going to continue to be silent and watch the world hate each other so loudly and wait for somebody else to fix it. But that,
Right.
I'm a part of the adult club now.
Right.
Um,
I love how you've brought that, how you've said that, like, oh, now we're the adults. We have to, if we want change, if we want to do something, like, we're the adults in the room.
I mean, I just like I believe that at my
Yeah.
core,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I love what you said. Sorry to
no,
cut you off. I really like what you said about like acknowledging their frustration, like even, but then how you started to see people then speak up or like acknowledge as well, things like that. Because a lot of times I choose to believe that people don't wake up and, um, we have a leader who says this, and I absolutely adore it. Like, people don't wake up and decide to be assholes. I like to believe that. I think whenever we have opportunities and we see people in those instances taking those times, and I've talked about like being this bridge and trying to help bring connection and conversation. I think we've talked about, first and foremost, we're all humans, we all want our existence acknowledged. I think in those instances that's what you do. When other people see that, it gives them that, like, oh well, that person did that, I can do that. I can. I think it encourages, and it just brings to mind for me, because I enjoy reading. I'm reading the newest Hunger Games book, the Sunrise of the Reaping or something like that. It's fresh on my mind when you said that, and you were like, "Oh, I put something out there," and all of a sudden I started to see all these other responses, or people chiming in. The Hunger Games, the one is called Catching Fire for a reason. It's
I've
because it
never
takes one person.
I've never read those or
Okay.
read those.
But
Maybe
it
I
it
should, but I can't get beyond the premise of children killing each other for survival.
I totally understand. I get that. But my point being that for things to happen,
Yeah.
there needs to be a catalyst. There needs to be something to start it. And if that is allowing to make space for people to be seen as human beings, I'm fine with being that human being. I will
Yeah.
go start that every day. That does not mean that I agree with you. Let me be very clear. I think if we start at that place of humanity, if we start at that place of connection, we can then allow our that conversation and potentially a relationship to grow. That is my perspective, and I'm the one with the microphones.
Yeah.
That's what I'm throwing out
I
there.
think it's so interesting. I went through this could be a whole nother topic where I won't go deep into this, but I went through this training session. I had a lot of really good opportunities at at work. Like my first real corporate job out of college for training. We had some really good development sessions. One of them was on the 3 levels of listening. We brought in these outside coaches that taught these classes, and it was the first time I had heard this concept of the 3 levels of listening, and it's stuck with me. Level 1 is listening for agreement. That is where most people spend the majority of their time. It's level 1 for a reason, like, right? You're not, everybody needs all 3 levels, and
I agree.
everyone has all, there are purposes for all of them.
Right.
But I think kind of the point that they were making is awareness of the different levels, and then practicing using level 2 and 3. We don't just stay in level 1. Level 1 is listening for agreement. I think that is where most people just live the majority of their lives. They're just listening to something and deciding whether I agree with it or whether I don't agree with it, which is, I think, hardwired into us. That's a part of being human, is interpreting the world around you and how do you fit into it and how does it fit around you. Level 2 listening is listening for understanding, setting aside like the choosing to agree or disagree and really listening to understand where the other person is coming from. I feel like that's where the humanity starts to come in. Then level 3, which is one that our producer is very good at, and I really have not built those muscles, is like listening for the things that aren't being said. When you're in a room full of people, you're watching what the non-speakers are, nonverbals are, and how they're responding and reacting. And I'm just glued on the speaker and like trying to get past the whether I agree or disagree to the understand, and then watching their body language and forget that all the rest of the people in the room exist. I'm very lucky to have a partner who is good at level 3 because I learned so much in watching him do that. But it's just interesting because I think what we forget is that level 1 is default, but it's not the only range
Right.
that exists for us. So there's my side quest. Thanks for coming to my TED
That's
Talk
my
today.
Jen talk. No, but to bring this like back to bravery, I think that is what I want to see more of in all things of my life, in my career, in my relationships, in my in our all the political sectors that we participate in. But I think it takes bravery to do that. It takes bravery to want to listen and be willing to listen beyond level 1. It takes bravery to share your why. You have to be vulnerable and be willing to make waves potentially. I think if we can engage in those conversations and we can see the humanity in each other, how we go about getting something may be different, but I think the outcome we can all pretty much agree on, that we want people to live happy, healthy lives.
I know I mentioned this a couple of episodes ago, but if you have not watched the show, You Can't Ask That, and you have Netflix, I would suggest that you go look it up, because talk about like seeing the humanity, talk about people living bravery, like just that show has been so helpful for me in challenging the way that I think,
Yeah.
and kind of those passive thoughts that come in that you're not
Yeah.
really even aware of, just helping me broaden the way that I see people. Just cannot recommend that enough. I still just think whoever is directing and producing that show is like a freaking genius. There you go. That's my thought. What would you tell someone who says that they wish they could be brave? I've heard people say that. I just wish I could be brave. What would you tell somebody who says that?
Kind of how I think I would ask the question that we kind of started off with. What does bravery mean to you? What does it mean to you? And then talk to me about your life. Tell me about the experiences. When do you think you haven't been brave? Because as we've discussed, like I think kind of our definition of brave, although not totally wrong or off base, like it can be different, like based on, our lived experiences, level setting on what that is, and then helping them see. Getting up out of bed and dressed and out the door is an act of bravery.
Yeah. I that just makes me think about when my kiddo was little and wore cowboy boots and gym shorts to school, and that's what they wanted to wear. And we had this conversation, hey, if that's what you want to wear, you got to own it. You got to own it. Then you just got to be prepared.
Yeah.
In those moments, that was an act of bravery, getting
Yeah.
dressed and getting out the door. I think so. There are a few words that I would pull from some people who have said it better than me. Margie Worrell, she has a TED Talk out there. If you look her up, I think there are some really good, interesting things to pull from it. She says, "All the courage you have ever admired in others lives in you." I thought that was a really interesting quote because oftentimes when we think about bravery, we think about it as a character trait. It's a part of a personality, and you either have the personality that has bravery or you don't. I think because, like, when I think about a lot of childhood stories from when I was growing up, I know that there are a lot of great authors writing childhood stories that are, intentionally showing the opposite of this today. When I think about a lot of childhood stories from when I was growing up and a lot of fairy tales, bravery was a characteristic of the
Mhm.
bold. It didn't belong to everybody. It just belonged to, the one that was slaying the dragon. I really like the way that she talks about bravery being like a thing that you practice. It's a muscle that you build, and it's not something that you either have or you don't. I think that it's a choice. I think that it is an acknowledgement that um, you're just gonna move forward. You're gonna
Yep.
fall forward, and you'll keep picking yourself back up. But you're recognizing when you're discounting the cost of inaction and when that's getting you stuck because you think, if I take this action, it may cost me something. You're not realizing that by not taking action, it's costing you everything. And I thought that was a really interesting takeaway from what she had to say and the stories that she was telling. I think also I love what Rashma talks about in "Don't let perfect get in your way." I think I love that because it speaks to me so much. But I had a leader who used to say directionally correct a lot. And we were talking about reporting a lot, and let's just kind of get it directionally correct. That was a phrase I could grasp onto because I tend to want things to be exact. Like, it's very literal, very exacting. I want to be perfect. Even last night, as I was thinking, I don't want to leave this person sharing their pain and vulnerability just hanging. I don't want them to feel alone, yet I don't know that I have the right words. I was like searching for what the perfect words were. And then I realized, like, if I wait for perfect, my cost of inaction could be too great. And so just be directionally correct and keep showing up as your true authentic self and let other people see it no matter how messy it is. Then rely on them to take you as your whole person and know, like, even if you don't say all the right words or do everything exactly right, they'll see your actions as directionally where you're
Right.
intending to go. There was somebody at the Build conference that was in one of the panels, I think, and they were talking about how they just put themselves out there, sometimes too much, to the extent that they would say things that could be misinterpreted.
Hmm.
Their point of view on this was, when I say something and then I realize that maybe I've just been, I didn't, my intent didn't come out, I'll just go like readdress that and apologize for how it may have come across and share my intent. And for the most part, like, the people that are there showing up for me, it's like they get it. And I thought that was just such a beautiful moment describing kind of us being willing to see each other as our whole selves. And I think that that understanding helps build the muscle for bravery.
Yep.
And then just celebrate failure. I think we forget that it's really important to be proud when you fail because you took the chance.
Great.
I know that I wait for perfection to be proud. I think that's something that, like, was just culturally a part of when I was growing up. For me as a leader at work, that was one of the big things that I worked on learning was, how do you celebrate things even before they're perfect? How do you celebrate failure? Failure leads, like, failure is the catalyst for invention.
Right. And
And
if we don't talk about it and we don't celebrate it, then it's missed opportunities for others to learn, like that fail faster mentality is, we'll learn from others. If we don't talk about those things, then I can't.
Yeah, failing means you took a chance, you took a risk, and you didn't know exactly how it was going to turn out, but you did it anyway. And I think we have to start not just accepting that, but we have to start celebrating that. And so Reshma had one more thing to say that I want to bring in, and that was she talks about the difference between being gutsy and being a go-getter. She said, I would describe myself growing up as a go-getter. I did all of the things. I was involved in all of the things. I was taking all of the classes. I was going to all of the right schools. I was getting all the right jobs. I was signing up for all the right projects. If there was an opportunity that was good for you to be taking, I was taking it. I was a go-getter, but I wasn't gutsy. She said the difference is I did all of those things because I knew that that's what I had been preparing to do. I
Yep.
was calculating my risk. I knew that those were things that I was set up to succeed in. And I'm paraphrasing her words, but she said, be gutsy because being gutsy is taking decision, be a gutsy go-getter because being gutsy is making those decisions where you don't necessarily have all the right perfect skills built yet, but boy, you're going to learn through the experience.
Yep.
And maybe it'll work out, and maybe it won't. That really resonated with me because while other people might look at me and think, "Oh no, yeah, Jen's gutsy," I think that I tend to be a go-getter, but I tend to calculate my risk,
Yep.
and I think we all have the capacity to be brave. We all have the capacity to be gutsy in our
Yeah.
own way.
I would agree. I think I know for me, when I walk away from things, I'm constantly playing them back in my head. Um, there are times whenever I'm like, I should have said something. I should have acted upon that. I should have. So I think taking that time to reflect on those moments and figuring out like what kept you from doing those things and doing it in a way that is, you're not being hard on yourself, you're not judging yourself, you're seeking to understand what were the actions that either led to your actions or led to your inaction. That way, if you are ever in that scenario again, you are ready. You can show up for yourself in the way that you wanted to, when and if that opportunity presents itself again.
Yeah. I love that, Chris. I think you are incredibly brave. I think you exhibit bravery constantly and you inspire me to be brave. I get that sometimes acts of bravery don't feel like being brave, but just as we close, I just want to celebrate you for a minute and say, I am so glad that I get to be in life next to somebody who is such a brave human who inspires me to be more brave. I just have a ton of appreciation for you.
Well,
Thanks for that.
you know that I love you. I appreciate you. I love your family. And I mean, it's the same for you. You show up brave to me all of the time. It is sometimes in small little ways, but in other times in big ways that I don't think you recognize. I thank you for that. I thank you for always being willing to push and to challenge, and you do it in such a way that doesn't make me feel uncomfortable. I think those are small acts of bravery that you practice every day, that it's you being you, but I don't think the magnitude of it is truly, you truly see it. Thank you for doing that. To be on this journey with you is so exciting,
It's
and an
incredible.
opportunity that I am very blessed to be part of.
It's incredible. It's such an incredible journey. I can't believe that I mean, I'm glad we waited because I don't think I would have been ready. Also, like, the impatient part of me is like, if we hadn't waited so long, we'd already be there, wherever there is that we're at it. Got no idea. I am incredibly grateful to have jumped into this with you. I would say for anyone else out there having that moment of, man, I really want to do this thing, but I'm afraid to do it. Dive in, be partners with us, jump right in
Yep.
and just start doing it, and then tell us about it. We want to hear about it. We also would love to hear all about your stories of bravery. We would love to hear your thoughts on bravery, how you define bravery, because we have learned so much just in preparing for this
Yeah.
conversation, and I think we'll continue to learn more. Chris, how can they reach out to us?
Yeah, so we've talked about a lot, and we want to hear all your thoughts, feelings, and opinions. You can leave a comment on whatever listening platform you may be on. You can also email us at chrisjeninthemorning@gmail.com. You can also leave us a voicemail or a text message at 940-278 8129. We are still waiting for that first
Still
text
waiting.
message to come through.
Still waiting.
Then also don't forget to follow us on our social media platforms. We are on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. We're on the TikTok now.
Yeah. We're not on Twitter. That
No,
isn't really
or
Twitter
X,
anymore.
whatever it is. We are
We're
not
not on
on that.
that.
But you can find us at Chris and Jen ITM. The ITM stands for in the morning.
In the morning.
In the morning. We put a lot of content out there. We usually do warm-ups as we're getting ready for these sessions, and we kind of capture some behind the scene things and share there. So be sure to follow us on all of those platforms. Like, follow, subscribe, comment, all of the things. We love to have you be part of this community.
Yes, absolutely. And until next time, be kind to one another and make it a great week.
Bye, everyone.
Did I even say another? Like, be kind to one another. Be kind to
We forgot the English language there at the end. In the morning.
In the morning.
Like, what happened to me? Did a Muppet take over? What happened?
In the morning. Be kind to one another.